Okay, I should be live according to YouTube. So basically, what's happening? I don't know if anybody's even going to be awake right now, but we're going to put this on Twitter, put the link out in case anybody wants to stop in. And I'm going to, let me just prepare my screen here. Just want to make sure. Okay. Not supposed to be awake. No, I didn't say I'm not supposed to be awake. I just don't know if anybody's going to be around. I like this. Have you seen Twitter? All right, so I'm gonna put up the screen because this guy is a, oh my god, this guy's such a fucking bitch. All right, I'm gonna put up my Twitter. I don't care. I don't think there's any information that shouldn't be there. So currently, this guy says, "Oh, you think?" Oh boy. So he wants to argue with me on Twitter like all the time. The past week, every chance this little asshole gets, he's always, sniping and pulling this passive aggressive crap. Then when I go to tell him to just come on the show, talk it out. Oh no, I can't talk to you. I'm going to report your stream for hate speech. So I'm trying to get him on to just talk things out here. Trying to speed up a WordPress site and do it. Okay. Yeah. Well, I haven't even been, I've been listening to a stream. I was listening to a totally different stream. Wasn't planning on doing anything. And, hold on. I'm just gonna. Anyway, I'm basically just trying to goad him into coming on. But this guy, he thinks that he's all against the incel brigade. He's one of those. He's jumped on this thing where, the people mentioned incels, and now everybody is an expert, and the incels are everything that is wrong with society. It's all their fault. It's amazing how stupid people are, how they jump on these bandwagons and just decide out of nowhere that, okay, this is the new problem. This is what's wrong with the world. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to send this dude the link, and he's going to get on the stream and he's going to talk about this. Otherwise, I'm done with this crap. This is stupid. All right, let me see if I can. All right, you know what? I might even post it publicly. I don't give a shit. If somebody wants to jump on, they can jump on. Send you something. Okay. Send this. All right, I'm going to open it. Well, maybe I can play it.
I smell something. Man, you smell something? I definitely smell something. Yeah, I smell pussy.
All right, yeah. I will definitely send that. But this is just getting to the point of absurdity. All these people want to talk big. They want to repeat themselves over and over again, but nobody ever wants to solve anything. Nobody ever wants to just talk about something and get it out of the way and solve it. And the thing is, he doesn't seem to understand that he is the very thing that he claims to be against. Now, I don't have the entire exchange memorized, but it started about a week ago, I believe. I kind of lost track. This isn't exactly the first thing on my mind, but usually, or from the beginning, I guess. Now I'm trying to remember where it started. I think I made a comment about Crunchyroll and how they're censoring things. And then he asked what it was, and then I showed him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna side with the feminists on this one." And it was like saying it was creepy, and but yet somehow it wasn't creepy for him to publicly admit that his only value in life is to tell girls on the internet that they're pretty. It was a really weird thing to watch. And then going on about this incel stuff, I think I made a post, pointing out the double standards of how, you know, um, they'll say don't let men value women by their appearance, or don't value yourself by the way men think of you. And then I said, but yet the people mock incels because women judge men based on their appearance and whatnot. So I was showing the double standard, and apparently that didn't fly with him. I don't really understand. Oh, oh yeah, he's claiming he's going back to sleep now. I bet he is. I sent him your YouTube link. I may not even keep this one up. I just wanted to start it up on the off chance that he came on, because I'm just at the point where people are so obnoxious about this crap. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to sleep. Okay, yeah, you're going to sleep, but you had time to talk shit. Anyway, we'll see what happens. If he doesn't come on in a couple minutes, then I'm going to sleep. I'm just tired of people that, they want to drone on and on and on about nothing. And then they talk all this game, they talk all this big tough guy act. They're going to do this, they're going to school you, they're going to wreck you. They're right, you're completely wrong. But when it comes down to it, when you say, okay, just talk to me, nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to just talk. What happened to communication? What happened to people solving their differences? The thing is, I never had an issue with this guy. I even tried to help this guy a couple of times. So here, I guess while I'm here, we can talk about some other stuff that's going on. Pufferfish behavior. Yeah, it does seem to be the case. So I've got a friend, and he's doing the attempt at online dating. And apparently I should just have my own internet detective agency, because I have at this point exposed like eight different catfish that have been after this guy. And what I think is going on is that he kind of has himself marked by either one person, or maybe like some kind of scammer ring or something on this website. And now all these different people are coming out of the woodwork to talk to him, send him these pictures. Oh, I'm this person. And then they'll come and they'll say, oh, I need money for this. If you give me this, we can come, I can come visit you, and we can be together and spend our whole lives together. And crazy wild stuff that sounds like it's rushing a relationship. And he's actually text messaging me right now. He just sent me a couple of more pictures, I guess, that were sent to him, and he's like, oh, can you check on these? And I'm seeing these already. And I already know that it's fake just by looking at it. It's not that. What I mean by that is, obviously it's real people in the photos, But what I'm saying is that they basically, this is the thing that they've been doing so far that I've realized, is they'll go for some girls, some very popular girls' Instagram, but it'll be like, maybe somebody that an English speaking audience wouldn't find. So just earlier, they used some Brazilian girl, and she didn't even write in English, so she probably doesn't even know the language. So it probably makes it easier for both her not to notice and my friend not to pick up on the fact that it's some famous person because they're from another country. And while I look at those and the photos that they send and I don't believe them, I can sort of see how somebody that doesn't spend that much time online does, because what they do is they're very selective about the photos that they send, and they send ones that look like they're more candid shots. Now, there have been a few where it was very, very obvious, and it's like, okay, that's a model's photo, that's a professional photo shoot, you're definitely bullshitting now. Yeah, look at that, he just ignored it. This guy he's a fucking pussy, I swear, just a fucking unbelievable pussy. I mean, how big of a bitch do you have to be unwilling to speak to somebody on the internet? Oh, I can send little passive aggressive fucking texts at you, but I can't hop on a stream and just talk to you like a human being. Fuck this fat fuck, honestly. Pathetic piece of shit that is, never going to do anything except bitch about the girls that he's not fucking online. And the reason he's going to do that is because he doesn't even have the guts to talk to somebody voice to voice on the internet. It blows my mind how people got this way. Anyway, I'm falling off track here. I'm currently trying to, he sent me the photos on my phone, and I don't really have my email connected to my phone. So what I'm trying to do is send the photos to myself, to my own email. And I'll have to unshare the screen for a sec because I don't want to expose my whole email box. But we'll do something a little bit more entertaining than worry about what some asshole on Twitter is doing. We'll expose a catfish live on air. So I'm just waiting for these 2 more pictures to send. People are probably, wondering about the title now because I thought I was going to have a guest, but he's going to sleep. He needs his nap time. Maybe mom needs to give him his bottle and change his diaper before he goes to bed, Anyway, the email has sent. I'm going to unshare the screen so I can check my email. And I think it's off. I just want to make sure before let the stream catch up to that. All right. So it's off now. So I'm checking the email, download the pictures, and we will do what we do. Here we go. There's 3 of them, I guess. No, I think I linked the account to you earlier. I know she's from Brazil because I found that she had a Twitter account as well. And yeah, it said she lived in Brazil, and I believe she was posting in Portuguese, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not as familiar with the language as I am others. All right. Anyway, let me do a screen share again. And we'll share this Google page. We're going to do Google image search. So I'm going to upload, I think, one here. Okay, so what do we got? Any results? Yes, we do. I don't even think I can go to some of these links on air. But it says Lexi Bell. So they're not, oh my God, they make it too obvious. All right, so I don't even know. I probably don't even need to check more than one, but I'm going to do it anyway. Who does this come up as? Okay, that one doesn't come up as anyone, but I imagine it's all the same woman. This one doesn't either. So only one of them comes up as somebody, which is interesting. I don't think I can I don't think I can check the links though on air. Well, let me unshare to see how not safe for work that is. And maybe we'll be able to get back to it. I don't even know if I'm allowed to. You know what? I better mute the speakers too, just in case it's like one of those weird ass websites where a video automatically plays or some shit. Oh boy. Yeah, we definitely can't show this on air. So it's basically just a collection of this girl's photos. And yeah, she's definitely not the person that's messaging my friend. I guess I have to break the news again. Oh boy. What did you send him? I saw. You're a punk ass bitch. Nice. Yeah, so let's see. Gotta tell him. All right. I hope that didn't. I don't think that should have muted me, right? No. Although people dropped out, I wonder. Honestly, though, what is going on? I like how one of my followers was just like he saw the post and he's like, "Oh my lord." When can you just stop having to be a catfish PI? I don't know. I hope soon because it's getting ridiculous. I told him to get off. I wanted to do a separate episode just about this, so it's kind of annoying that these streams have kind of crossed with what I intended to do versus what is going on now. What is that noise? That was weird.
Welcome, pussy.
Hey, you're here?
Yes.
Wow, you showed up, man. What's going on?
Fine. Now, let me start this by saying one little thing. I post what I post on Twitter because really I don't have anything really to hide. In fact, if you know a little bit about me and you aren't that different.
Wait,
Except
how can you say that when you don't even know anything about me personally? Like I don't talk about my personal life on the internet.
you don't know personally. You only know a small fraction of shit going on.
Right. You're right. I do, and I admit that. But what I'm saying is, you come after me for this stuff that I haven't even said. Meanwhile, I go to your feed and it's shit that you've said. It's like you're attacking yourself.
Look, my life is kind of in a weird place right now. I'm working like third shift retail nowadays. It's been officially a year since I had sex. I'm kind of in that place where I got to get my life back together, so things aren't really all the way right in my head. So
look, that's if that's something you're actually doing, I think that's a good thing. But I still don't really completely understand what that has to do with the fact that you seem to have taken this, I don't know, this liking to coming out of nowhere and just sniping these tweets and then like running off into the darkness after a while. Like, what is your point here? What do you think my position is on these topics that you're taking issue with? Because every time I read what you say, it's like you're saying shit that I never said.
Because the whole thing with taking out a small, insignificant part of a game is something they've been doing literally since the
Oh,
80s with
you think we're
anime
talking?
games.
Oh, the joke thing that I made just now that you responded to, that didn't have anything to do with the Crunchyroll thing. What I was the point of that one was the way that, I mean, you probably are aware of this because I think I've seen you retweet some like social justice related like stuff that kind of talks about how it's been a problem. What I was saying is when you get these people that they're like, oh, I'm a big fan of this stuff. And what they'll do is they'll present themselves as a very big fan of the intellectual property or the community. And then they'll be like, but this is a very big problem and we need to remove it. So it's kind of like they're using this status of fandom to say, my say matters because I love this so much. But what they're really doing
Well,
is they're infiltrating that community to prop themselves up as the majority when they're really just a vocal minority.
okay, let me explain. There's a reason why you need to do those sorts of things because if you don't, it becomes harder to further monetize said things. Because when you have something that is so problematic after a certain point, you can only make so much money off of it before eventually you hit the point where essentially you're just going to have like a giant PR nightmare that's going to make it hard to sell said product.
Okay.
Case in point, with anime, you have to start editing it, especially if you want to show it on certain channels.
Well, look,
Oh,
Even in Japan, they edit anime to an extent. There'll be TV broadcasts that have shit taken out, and then later on the Japanese Blu-ray release, it'll be there. So I understand that, and I'm not saying that that is necessarily a problem if they got to broadcast it on TV in a certain way. That's that's what they have to do to meet ratings or whatever. But when it comes to the video games, they have a rating system, and if you think about it, it's sort of illogical to say we have to remove this feature that has no nudity, no real sexual content. It's not like it's a hentai game. And then if you think about it even further, the series it came from is a bit of a fan servicey series. So the people that are going to be interested in the game already know the series it's coming from. And so they're already okay with the contents of that show. If they're all
all
right
right,
with
but
the contents of the show, why are they going to complain when it comes to the game?
all right, this kind of goes to something that I didn't realize till a few years ago when I went to the local anime convention where I live. Um, the thing you got to realize a lot about like the whole SJWC scene among anime, you're never gonna win a fight against those people because of two simple reasons. Number one, the women do not fucking give up in the fight at all, and they will not stop. I have fucking seen it. They're a relentless crowd of people. It's
But
goddamn
but don't
terrible.
you see
And
like that?
two,
Go ahead, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
and number two, the dudes, you got to realize when you put a situation where there are like a lot of women who are like highly opinionated and then make a few of them like relatively attractive, then you put the other element of the crowd, which is the nail in the coffin, which is you put a bunch of very sexually frustrated men there, and all they have to do to stay in her good favor is just constantly back her up on everything she says. This is how you get to where these sorts of things happen.
Sure, and I can acknowledge that. But what I'm saying is that's how these people win because nobody wants to stand up and say, "All right, look, enough is enough. No, we have to draw the line somewhere. You can't have everything you want." I mean, the thing that you're saying is, and what I think even goes into relationships and whatnot is you'll notice that giving somebody everything they want usually doesn't lead to the best results, even within personal relationships. That's why you got guys on Twitter and guys on the internet that just want to come out and they want to white knight these chicks and flatter them with compliments and whatnot. But you'll notice that the guys that do that aren't the ones getting the dates, aren't the
I
ones
know
getting the
that. I've
boyfriend.
said this. If you actually read my tweets, I
So
acknowledge
we're
that
in
too.
agreement. So we're in agreement on that. And that's what I find weird about the fact that you keep coming after these posts. When I go to your feed, I see shit that's like in the same vein.
Because honestly, I hate. How can I put this in a way that doesn't make me sound paranoid? Um, There are certain people who follow me on Twitter who know me outside of Twitter that if shit goes too sideways with what I post, I'm gonna have to start explaining myself to certain people.
Okay, I mean that's fair, but I'm not exactly sure how that involves me personally.
You aren't really a specific part, a specific moving part in this whole little, mechanical
I
thingy.
would hope not, considering we barely know each other, and I don't know too much of what you're referring to.
Basically, my whole thing is the first time you challenged me about it, I was told, I shouldn't do that. And then, okay, this is where I'm probably gonna get on the bad side of some people, but as far as it goes with things like, the men going their own way movement and red pills and incel thing, on my Facebook, I'm in this group for, I won't say what the name of the group,
Sure.
but it's the Facebook group for a podcast I used to listen to where people go in there and ask each other for advice about stuff regarding mental health issues. I brought up one time about something that some red pill dude some red pill dude had brought up. I posted it, not an agreement saying this is what this guy said. Can somebody help me disprove his argument? And for the next day and a half, I had people blocking me and telling me how I was a neckbeard.
Okay.
Barely, there were people who helped me, but it was this whole thing like I didn't say I agreed with this guy. I just said, can somebody disprove this argument?
So are you trying to
And
say that people may see that you have crossover posts with certain people or you reply to certain things and they may infer that you agree because that has been your experience so far?
yeah, because here's the thing: when it comes to the whole manosphere thing going on the internet, I don't agree with them. There was a point when I did. I actually wrote an article on a site where I explained why in the black community there are so many men going to the red pill movement. And I didn't say I agreed with it, but I was explaining this is why this happens. It's like we live in a community where we tell people all the time, you know, you need to be sexually liberated, sexually free, yada yada yada. But the example I used to prove what I was trying to say was I used the whole issue with George Herbert Walker Bush, not George W. Bush. I said George Herbert Walker Bush just lost his wife, and from what I hear in certain reports, Herbert Walker Bush might be on his fucking deathbed right now. And the reason I use him as an example is because honestly, the man just lost his wife, a woman who's been down with him since the very beginning of his rise to power, and now he's got to go through the last whatever last years or maybe even months of his life without her. Like it's kind of one of those situations like what happened with Johnny Cash after June Carter died, if you know what I mean.
Right.
So I said what I was trying to say was you can't honestly. The reason why I use him as an example is we live in a time where, how do I put this? We live in a time where we have so many women who want to be sexually liberated, sexually free, and do all this stuff, not realizing that eventually, not now, not tomorrow, not even within the next few months of this remaining year, but eventually all this stuff of like constantly just, you know, being willy nilly with dudes' emotions and like sexual desires, eventually you hit a wall where you can't pull that off anymore, and that you can't just keep doing that to people. Like the reason why I used George Herbert Walker Bush for this was a lot of men fear we're never going to have that kind of feeling, for better or worse, a feeling of we're going to get old with a woman we truly love, and when we lose her to death, we're never going to have the feeling of, oh, I lost somebody who truly knew me for what I am. At my heart, like no matter what anyone says about me, this is the one person on earth who knows me for who I truly am and held me down at like the worst parts of my life. I, I understand that we live in a time. The reason why I have such a problem with the whole incel community, and this is okay, I'll admit this right now. I get bored on Twitter, so I just pick fights to like. to like keep my mind going. Like you have to realize you're literally arguing with a crazy man every day out there.
All right.
Like point
Well, look,
number
look.
two.
You kind of went off a little bit on a tangent. Like I understood your overall point, but I just want to clarify. I'm not with the whole MGTOW, red pill, incel thing myself. I don't agree with most of the stuff that they do. I understand why they're in the position that they're in, but I don't think that what they have to present is the answer. So to me, the MGTOW thing is just okay, it's giving up. So they say they're about self-improvement and being themselves and working on themselves and not paying attention to women, but you go to a lot of their communities, you go to a lot of their videos, and all they're doing is complaining about how bad women are. And look, I understand there's a lot of bad women out there, there's a lot of bad men out there as well. The thing is,
Oh no, I understand that 1%
right,
too.
and the thing is that when you are a straight man or a straight woman, all your problems are going to be with the opposite sex in regards to relationships. So of course it's going to seem like one gender is worse than the other. You know, a lot of
No,
people
I
don't.
understand that. I understand completely. Like a prime example of what I'm talking about is, well, I think it kind of says it on my Twitter bio, but I said I live technically, I live in the capital city of Michigan. I actually live in East Lansing, which is a separate town east of Lansing proper. The thing a lot of people don't realize about Lansing is that Lansing is one of those towns where, like, and this kind of goes back to my old ad name, which was Mud Shark Lover 69. It was a kind of a running joke about Lansing, which is that it's one of those towns where the old running joke about a lot of these incel dudes of them constantly saying, women, all they ever do is, you know, what was I looking for to say? They always say they only like guys that make them feel better, not men who can actually do better for them. Because it goes to something I said I think I said it on Twitter before. I said like, you know, women will. I said, yeah, I think I said this today. I said men on men today, the biggest reason why men today are so unwilling to get their shit together collectively nowadays is that men today will be full on um men today will go and learn a trade like be a plumber, an electrician, or a welder, stuff, or a mechanic, and make good money, but they'll get curved for a guy who's like a full on like SoundCloud rapper, and then women will wonder why like all the good guys are like either A tapping out completely, or B, in the case of black women, they ask what are all these guys keep going for white chicks. This kind of goes to something I wanted to talk about. I'm going to probably be talking about later this week on a podcast I'm guesting on. Seriously, I say something, you can't honestly wonder why the men around you have no sense of like act right, but when they act right, you still curve them because of like arbitrary.
I think you got muted or something.
Oh, I don't know what happened. I think it was a. I
I
think that,
heard.
but like but yeah, I said like you can't sit here and wonder why like you can't sit here and wonder why like men will get their lives together, start working towards something better, but then you wonder like they're still getting curved, and then people say, why don't they just go for less attractive women? I'm like, all right, here's the thing. And this again goes to what I'm probably going to be talking about on someone else's podcast in a few weeks, about a few days. Um, you can't straight up tell somebody they need to lower their standards when women who are on the same tier as me in terms of looks, you tell them it's not even not that you tell them not to lower their looks. It's that goes to something I see all the time in social media. We constantly see this constant fighting against the female beauty standards of looking more like, I don't know, like a full-on model. Like we constantly, it kind of
Right.
feels
Well,
like
there is
the
a difference in standards. There's kind of a double standard where, no matter what the woman looks like on social media, they'll say, "Slay queen, you're beautiful no matter what you do." But, then they go out there and you see that they're talking whenever they get into an argument with a man, "You're just ugly, that's why you don't get any chicks, blah blah blah." So there is a bit of a double standard in which the way that people are viewed. The problem is that they're also trying to shoehorn the equality, men and women are, no different and they can do anything a man can do kind of thing, which, I mean, they should be given the opportunity, but that doesn't mean that the differences in the sexes aren't going to inevitably shine through. So they don't
yeah, and the thing is,
they don't leave room for people to be treated differently. They, in the same breath, they're saying treat everyone the same, but also treat everyone different when it's convenient for us. And so I do see that, and I do see where these guys are coming from, but at the same time, if it's these girls that are extremely brainwashed to the point of thinking that they are entitled to have somebody change to their standard, it's going to be a hard time getting them to see that they're having hypocritical expectations.
yeah, that's kind of the thing.
You can't
Hmm?
ask somebody to bring to the table what you don't have.
Yeah,
And
it kind of
and
goes
the
to
thing that
my
you said about leagues, I didn't ignore your tweet. I was kind of waiting on it for a couple of days just to kind of sit on it because I hadn't formulated my thoughts. But the thing you were saying about how you thought that you had observed incels trying to go out of their league, I
yeah,
mean,
like
that's something that you can kind of observe with anybody, but at the same time, I almost want to say that I don't necessarily believe in leagues the way that other people do. And what I mean by that is that, yes, there is a societal standard of what a quote unquote league is when it comes to looks and whatnot. But then you do have cases where you'll look at a guy and you'll look at his girlfriend and you'll be like, well, how did that dude end up with her? So there are cases where there is somebody that you would consider in a below average league that has the model girlfriend, and the way that that seems to happen more often than not is through a status thing. Maybe they have money, maybe they are, an owner of a
oh yeah,
business, maybe
totally.
they're an
Like
actor. So those things do
yeah,
happen, and that's why I feel like inevitably it becomes more about some sort of societal status, even though we frame it in like a framework of appearances.
I think like the only time I've ever like dated out of my league in my life, honestly, was my first girlfriend. But the reason you got to understand why me and her got together, to be completely honest, was we met back in high school. And what happened was three dudes in our class were essentially about to rape her. And I
God.
realized what was going on. I was like reading in my textbook and I was like, all right, motherfuckers, enough. I'm tired of your shit. Sit down. They're like, shut up, Howard. I ain't got nothing to do with you. And I'm like, sit down. And they're like, what you gonna do about it? Then I closed the book and I'm like, all right, man, last chance. And they're like, what are you gonna do about it? I took a deep breath and I threw a book at the first one, jumped over the table, just elbowed the first one in the face, kicked the other one in the dick, and just started basically going like straight up Batman on these motherfuckers. Keep in mind, like I was in better shape back then, and
I
since I
guess
was
that's
a
one
kid, I
way to
wasn't
get
like,
together.
hmm?
I said, I guess that's one way to get together.
Well, yeah, I didn't realize she was into me until like way later, but she's also nuts, so that's why we broke up. So
Well, the
but
problem that
no,
I think in a lot of these communities is that it becomes too general. People take their look. I know everybody only has their personal experiences to go off of, but people take their personal experiences and then they apply it to everybody. And that's just not usually the way it is. You have to, yes, you can learn from your past mistakes. You can make observations in the future based on your past, but ultimately, everybody you come across is a different person, and you kind of have to try to take them on an individual basis and get to know them for who they are instead of just saying, I had this bad luck with these women, I'm done. So, because if you do that, you're basically justifying it whenever somebody makes that same kind of assessment for you. It'll create a double standard. It'll create this cycle where people will take their personal experience, apply it to everybody, and then generalize throughout their whole life, and nobody's ever going to learn anything that way. So
Well, that's the
my point,
thing. I've said for.
I,
Hmm?
I was
Well,
going to
that's
say,
what I've been saying.
trying to say that no matter how bad it gets, you're always going to have shit experiences, but you kind of have to try to do what you can to work on your own life. And that, I guess, there's your MGTOW shit. But it's true, because you can't base your value on what other people think completely. Otherwise, you're not going to have any personal value when you're alone, and people are going to see that. I know it's
Well,
difficult.
that's true. I know it's true. It's like the thing is, I've said before, this kind of goes to why I get so frustrated with like talking about like dating issues with like certain women in my life, because I keep trying to explain this to them. Like, I'm at a point where this kind of goes to why I changed my at name on Twitter again. I think I'm at the point where I think I'm done dating one particular race of women, namely white women, because how do I put this nicely?
You don't have to
As
be
a black,
nice. I say shit all the time. Say what you got to say.
okay, I'll say it. I feel like as a black dude, I always get like the kind of white women that not even other white guys want.
So you're saying you feel like you're getting a leftover sort of situation.
And the thing was, I didn't want to believe it when my mom said it to me, but the point where I realized she was right, she just got out the hospital, but when I visited her when she was in the hospital, she was like, I made some offhanded comment about my dating life. She's like, well, as long as you still not dating those like fat, ugly white girls. And I'm like, oh, come on, they weren't all fat and ugly. Okay, she said not all fat, but come on, let's be real here. You could do better, you know, with other black women. I'm like, the black women you could try that I always end up with, either they don't want me or they're the ones that. Okay, this is gonna sound like a bit problematic for me to say, but I'll say it anyway. You ever see some women, regardless of race, who are so unattractive, you have to suppose the only reason somebody would be with them is they're using them as a beard.
Jeez. I mean, I know sort of what you're referring to.
Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like
But
some women where
here's
you're
the
just like,
here's the thing is that, look, attraction is important to almost everybody to some degree. Most people who say, "Oh, it doesn't matter at all," are kind of lying. I mean, you got to find something you're attracted to. But
well, that's how it kind of was with my second to last relationship. Like there was attraction at first, but after a while, hmm,
oh, I didn't.
there was kind of a thing that broke it down. And it kind of goes to an article I wrote a few years ago. Well, a year ago. Um, oh,
Yeah, I'm still here. I don't know if this is working or not.
yeah. But I wrote an article about a year ago. The story behind it was I was with my second to last girlfriend who was a white woman. What happened was, and you could check the date to verify this. The article posted on the site about like July 6th. That's because I wrote it on July 4th and didn't send it till like midnight on July 5th. Um, Basically, my girlfriend, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Get Out, but I kept hearing jokes about it
I
because
know
this
what
is
the
like
movie
one of the
is.
first times I've been to her parents' house, and it was for. Yeah. So I went to her parents' house for Fourth of July. Her parents, to give you an idea I don't know what state you're in, but um, to give you an idea of the difference between where I live versus where her parents lived, it was like the difference between like if you were in Florida going from Orlando to Opelika.
All right.
Way to explain it potentially. Like, and I went out to her parents' house, which they lived by the lake, and I kept hearing get out jokes from my friends all the time, and after a while, I just got pissed off and very drunk because I was drinking the whole time I was there. And I wrote this article called "Face It, Blurs Are Better Off Dating Interracial." Now, I don't really agree with the message of said article anymore, but I do agree that as far as like, nerdy black men in the black, there's a bit of a treated in it.
Okay.
I'm not saying that black men need to date interracial just to find their like, perfect mate. But what I am saying is this. We can't, as a community, honestly sit and wonder why. You can't honestly wonder why, like, black men are, like, over and over and over and over again, constantly, you know, going outside the race to find dates. But when you see how they get treated within the black nerd community, it's just one of those things. Oh, and I said the first time I tried to explain it, but I said, what are the number one ways you can tell the black nerd community is is one of those places where a lot of people don't like a lot of black nerds just straight up like stop hanging around other black nerds or don't want to be identified as one anymore is because a lot of times the black nerd community, this is something you notice very quickly. It's a community that the problem isn't that it's matriarchal, the problem is the type of women that are running shit.
Well,
like,
this is kind of where you lose me, not necessarily because I am, not grasping what you're saying, but more so because I feel like when it comes to personal life issues that you kind of have to break away from the focus of community and what said community is doing, because at the end of the day, it's your life, it's your relationships, you have to go by who you happen to come across in your life, who you meet, and what that person is in value to you, not necessarily worrying about these trends and these generalizations.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm
That's
saying
what I'm saying.
there may be trends, sure, but it's up to each of us to say for ourselves, okay, who am I? What do I like? And what do I offer? And what does this person offer me? It doesn't matter, what any of their backgrounds are. It only matters that you guys are a fit for each other. And I realize that that's difficult to find with the way that dating is portrayed now, where it's always like, don't, I'm not, and of course I agree, don't settle, but there's this emphasis that everybody is replaceable. The grass can always be greener on the other side. And I think a lot of that has to do with the way that we now have not just a pool to choose from in our own, areas, but also because we can go online, people can hit up Tinder, swipe through, 500 people within a 100-mile radius, and you now have more choices than ever with all these little checklists you can box off to create a perfect little partner for yourself. The only problem is that person that you've created in your mind is most likely not out there. And when you swipe past somebody, you could very well be doing that to somebody that would otherwise fit for you, in spite of maybe not having one or two of those aspects or characteristics that you're looking for. There's never going to be that perfect thing because people are imperfect.
That's
But
what I've been saying for the longest.
right, but what we're doing is setting ourselves up for a situation where people have themselves convinced that they always deserve what they want and nothing less. And look, it's one thing, like I said, it's one thing not to settle for a bad relationship. I don't think anybody should do that. I think you should, if you can't find somebody at the time, you should be alone until you can find the right person for you, because otherwise you're just kind of wasting your energy. You're setting yourself up for disappointment. So don't accept less in the sense that you're going to be with someone that treats you poorly or that you're not truly happy with. but also don't think that you can sit down with a piece of paper and make a list and then have somebody in front of you and check off every box on that list. Be reasonable.
Exactly. That kind of goes to what I was saying. My whole frustration is with with the whole Tumblr generation. It goes to the whole thing of like these are you see on Tumblr, you see it all the time, especially on Twitter. They'll take like a female character and like you like race bend them or like make them a certain weight, and you'll be like, all right, I guess that's what you're wanting. But you notice with the guys, they never flinch on what they want him to look. He's always like good looking, muscle bound. It's like, so let me get this straight. You want us to be all the ass queen all over, fat Batgirl, but it's clear that you still want your male superheroes that you lust over to look like fucking Channing Tatum.
Right. And that sort of even goes into the post that you replied to earlier, where I'm saying that they take one aspect and say this is bad, this is always bad, and then leave everything else alone. I mean, look, video games, for example, they always want their female characters to reflect real life, as they put it. It doesn't make any sense. They're taking one aspect of gaming and then ignoring all the other areas in which fantasy applies. You could shoot somebody in the head 3 times and they get back up. You can fight dragons with swords. You can, cast magic spells, but you're going to tell me a girl with some high heels and a suit of armor is just too much? That's where you draw the line. It's hypocritical, and it's selective on the basis of ideology rather than anything that is grounded in any kind of reality. And that's my problem with it. My issue is one of principles and one of censorship, because the less that you allow people to express themselves, the more uniform things become. And then even ideas that, like we're discussing here, become too much for people to hear. So the more that we do
Exactly.
this, the more that we just bow down and say, oh, well, I'm going to give in because these people are crazy and they're just, going off on these tangents and calling everybody problematic, calling everybody sexist. At some point, you have to realize that that's not the way that the majority of people act. If you go outside, I never hear any of this garbage that I see on Twitter. And that's not to say it doesn't exist, because I know, for example, on college campuses, it can be pretty bad.
Oh, that it does. But here's it does because I live near MSU, Michigan State University. Um, the thing I find about it is like you can kind of tell just by looking at some certain women who are going to say that kind of shit. But this is what I noticed back when I worked at my old job. I worked in a restaurant. I never saw women in there who were college students talk about that, but that was because I worked a place where like all the waitresses were like really attractive, so you never really saw them have that worry on their brains. Like, you know.
Well, that's also something that can be observed, is that people that don't find themselves conventionally I'm gonna have to take a sip of water and then I'll finish my point. Throat's getting dry. Um, excuse me. So people that don't find themselves conventionally attractive tend to flock to these ideologies, and I think it's just a way of breaking down the so-called beauty standards because they want to feel attractive too, and they feel like society is against them. But the problem is that society doesn't necessarily create the standard. I mean, it does to a degree, but there's also a natural biological component to what men find attractive in women and vice versa. And the reason for that is reproduction. Part of the issue, though, is that we've moved away from the family unit and the idea of reproduction being a big part of a relationship.
Well, to
So,
be fair, really fair about why that happened is because a lot of people nowadays, there aren't a lot of people. I think there's an echo.
Um,
Um,
maybe.
there's a lot of people nowadays who are having kids simply on the grounds that they can't afford it. And people say, well, our parents couldn't afford it. No, 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 no. That's just what they tell you. Like back in the day, a lot of our parents had kids when there were like really good jobs out there that paid really well. Case in point being my mom, who to this day still works for General Motors, despite me being like I'm almost 30, and my little brother is he's like turning 14. Like she's been working for GM for a long time. But you gotta keep in mind, my parents had me in 1991 when they were like in their early 20s. So the economy back then weren't was a lot better than it is now. The thing is that people. The thing is that a lot of times this is the thing people don't say all the time. The reason why they say, "Well, we don't need to have kids." No, 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 no. Just say that all the men you want to have kids with are usually verifiably terrible human beings. Because this is the thing I notice every time. The men who typically have their shit together nowadays, who are like who would make like good, fathers and whatnot, a lot of times those are the guys that you constantly see. um what's the word I'm looking for here? The guys who typically have their shit together, a lot of times they're the ones that if you notice, they're the ones that are like they're clearly the ones getting curved to shit.
Hmm. I'm not necessarily 100% sure I agree with that. I'm sure there are instances, but as far as the situation with having kids goes, there are a lot of people that are on, I would say, more in a situation of poverty, and they tend to have a lot of children, and that seems to be variety of reasons, lack of education, lack of responsibility. Um,
Oh, I agree with you
so
100% on that
so
because in
eh,
Lansing, there's a lot of women who have that situation.
yeah, and there's the same kind of thing around here in certain areas, but I think it also gives people that are, and this is for the ones that are actually good parents, it gives people that may not have much else in their life a sense of purpose, and I don't think that that's necessarily wrong. But what is important is that they're raised in such a way that they're able to break out of that later on, and that can be a challenge. But I think we're kind of deviating way off from the original point. My main purpose was just trying to figure out what the issue was with the things that I had posted, and what I'm getting out of this conversation is not as much of disagreement as I would have thought from the responses I was getting.
Well, the thing is, it's just things have been kind of weird lately because it's been one of those things where I'm starting to question a lot of things, especially when it comes to like women in my life, where it's this whole thing of, I know I'm not entitled to women's affections. The problem I have is it really does feel a lot of times like, what's the word I'm looking for here?
Is this a situation where you keep hearing these opinions about how men aren't entitled to relationships or intimacy, but at the same time trying to reconcile that with the desire to have those things?
It's that plus, I tell them like, well, I'm trying to do this. Like, well, you need to get this going on with life and that going on with life. But then I tell them like, you know, um, I keep trying to say like, yo, you tell me to.
Uh, I think I lost you for a second there. I don't know if that was an internet issue. I think the stream is still going at the least, but I don't have anything else. Well, uh, I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear you. This may be the end of the stream. Stream is up. It says internet. Okay. Yeah, I do have it. I do have it open here, and it looked like everything was fine. So I don't know. I guess we'll see if he is able to come back, or that's going to be a hang up. I I I do find it interesting though that this is this seems to be exactly what I thought it was. You there?
Yeah, something wouldn't happen.
All right.
Anyway, like I said, like it's one of those situations where I think it's they say like you're not owed sex or affection. All right, I understand that 100%. The problem I have is like y'all are telling me I need to do X, Y, and Z thing to make myself more attractive to women. Yet a lot of times in a lot of these pools, I watch men who clearly have way less than me who are like
Yeah, yeah.
just
See, that's the thing. I have a friend that does YouTube videos that kind of touches upon this. Maybe I'll send you his channel afterwards. But he talks about some of these kind of things, and it's stuff I've talked about as well. It's that men get advice on what women want from women. The problem is that it's not 100% that those women that are giving you those answers are being honest in what they want. They say they want one thing, but if you observe reality, they take something different. And so then when men complain about this, they're called the entitled ones. They're called the privileged ones. Now look, there are some guys that take it too far. I completely agree. There are guys that
me too,
act
me too.
creepy as
I
fuck.
agree that
It's
100%.
messed up. But the thing is that relationships are a two-way street, and if people aren't openly communicating with each other honestly, then it's not going to work, and there's just going to be a greater divide. Instead of placing blame back and forth, people need to open the door of communication and just be honest about shit. And the problem is a lot of times they're not necessarily because they're being malicious and lying, also because they may not even be aware that they don't really know what they're looking for themselves.
True. And I've said this before on some level to them, but it's been this whole thing of like I think it's just I've said before, like I said, like why do you have this like sense of entitlement? It's like, oh shit, it's thundering out there. Um I said before, and they're like, why do you I said this to them, like, it's not that I'm owed anything, it's that the the level the level of stuff I have to go through just to get, basic affection is just one of those things where it's like, is there a point to this anymore?
Well, see, that's why I would say that it depends on who you're approaching, who is approaching you. The people that are actually interested in a genuine way aren't going to make somebody jump through hoops just to earn something that should be mutual.
Oh yeah, and I've been told that by plenty of people on Twitter. And the thing is that a lot of times, this is what I tell people all the time. Like this goes to what I've said for a long time. A lot of times, when they're like, "Well, if someone likes," like, yeah, but it seems like the only time I ever get told to, the only time I ever seem to meet women who are like, you know, I'm trying to figure out the correct way of putting it because I know some people are going to hear this later and say I was being problematic how I worded things, but I'm going to say it the way I want to say it. What I think is like to say, okay, you're not entitled to my affections. All right, But tell me, why are you telling me I should, for other women, reach hit a point of reaching this tier of attractiveness and whatnot, but yet we all, me, everyone else, we all see you clearly giving affection to a guy who doesn't fit any of those things at all, like at all.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that's a situation that most guys have seen. But the thing is that in my experience, that people don't. It's best never to really mess with them because they don't learn. Maybe at some point later down the road, they're going to learn their lesson and say, "Oh, I should have taken that guy. He probably would have been kind to me, and we probably could have got on well." But a lot of people have to come to that realization themselves. You could do everything to show them that you're exactly what they say they want, but if they're not biting, you're not going to convince them, and you shouldn't have to. Nobody should have to do that. The thing is that it's one of those situations where they say you're not entitled to this, but by saying that, they're setting the standard that they're in charge. And I don't think that that's a good way to enter in to any situation because nobody should be in charge. It should be a level playing field. It should be about two people getting to know each other as individuals, not I am woman, you are man, you are below me, so show me that you're worth my time. Now, maybe there are people that actually think that way. Unfortunately, I've seen that, and they'll even say it outright. But in from my point of view, those aren't the kind of people you want to get yourself involved with because who do they think they are to automatically talk down to someone they don't know on nothing more than the basis that they're a man?
I can give you a perfect example of what you just said. Um, there's this one particular there's a one particular group of podcasters who I have like a deep, deep hate for because of how things happen when we when things I finally broke ties with them. And to make a long story short, what happened between me and them, this was back, and this is probably gonna not shock you when I say this. There was a time when I was going through what you would call um, a male feminist phase, which
Yeah,
don't ask Charlie. My friend's in my apartment playing PlayStation, so he's here in this conversation too.
that's
Um, Um, Basically, what happened was I keep trying to explain this to the people all the time. I didn't join. They always say you only joined us because you were trying to get women. No, I joined all of you because I figured I might be able to see the change I wanted in America. I saw in the world. I wanted to see in the world, but because we were because let's be honest, there are some legitimately toxic things that happen among our generation in this day and age. Getting laid was just a bonus, right? I never got laid out of these people, dude. I wasn't there initially to get
well,
laid. I was there because
so
I was trying to fix a
that's
problem.
I think that's a misconception though, is that people join these type of things thinking it's the right thing, but they may not necessarily have it all worked out in their head. They just kind of trust what they're hearing rather than taking a look around and observing the way things are. But if you listen to all this, toxic masculinity, male privilege, all this crap for long enough, and you see the way that things actually operate within reality, you start to look around and you say, "Hey, this isn't right. Something's fucked up here." And I think for a lot of people, the male feminist thing has become nothing more than a disguise because you'll notice, I don't know if you've seen this, but I've noticed that a lot of these guys that claim to be these paragons of
Male
male
feminists
feminism,
are
they
always
get
the ones that are like,
yeah, they get outed as the ones that are committing the sexual assault and all that stuff. And it's like hiding in plain sight. They're safe there because they have their little ally title. The thing is they don't believe half the bullshit they're spouting. And
I believe it. There's some of that stuff I still believe now. The problem I had was that after a while, it became clear as day that we were dealing. I was dealing with people that were, at the very least, just At best they were egotistical. At worst they were very they were very corrupt.
All right, so what would you say then is a male feminist viewpoint that you can still say that you agree with then? Because that's what I would be curious about.
I still agree that women can lead certain things if they're actually competent on certain things. I agree that there are certain things within our culture about how we treat dating and inner intergender relations. There are certain things that I do agree that there are some things that are kind of fucked up that we kind of normalize. Like, I don't know if you ever watched like old sitcoms from the '90s. There are certain things that are in certain that go on some of those episodes of certain shows where it's like, yeah, it's kind of fucking creepy.
What do you have maybe an example of something that just out of curiosity so that I can say either way?
Um, Fresh
Doesn't
Prince
even
of
have to
Bel
be
Air,
from an actual episode. It could just be a situation in
like a
general.
trope, like one episode, like a Fresh Prince of Bel Air, how hardcore um well, two examples. One being Fresh Prince of Bel Air, with how hardcore Jazz went to try and like get with Hillary, despite the fact that like his it was his best friend's cousin, who, let's be honest, she probably wasn't the best.
She's like super
Uh,
shallow. I remember the show. I watched the crap out of that show when I was younger.
And two, another example. This is the big example, but this is often used a lot of times by like incels and other groups, especially black MGTOW groups. They use Family Matters. They always say like, "Well, Urkel had such
Oh,
a
okay.
heart."
Well, yeah. I mean,
They,
look, if you look at, I mean, Family Matters, that was a very unique kind of show. I don't really remember any male female relationship being that cringy on, like that was an extreme. That took I'm wearing you down, I remember. So eventually you wore her down. But
yeah, but at the same time, if you at the same time, Laura wasn't the best
no,
person
no,
to
that was
like.
see, I mean, if you're gonna look at fiction, and which is for me, it's kind of a problem, not in the sense that you can't analyze it, but just when you take it too far and try to apply it to society itself, it's like, I mean, that's a TV show. That's not to say that things like that never happen, but it's also within a fictional world. So the limits, things are exaggerated for television for comedy purposes. You could say in real life, if somebody did that, that'd be kind of fucked up. And yeah, you might be right. But as long as it's within those confines of fiction, it's not really an issue that needs addressing. If you find me an individual situation in real life where there's an Urkel and a Laura, fine, we'll talk about that.
Oh
But
no, I see these kind of situations all the time. I've said this for the longest. This goes back to my whole hometown. I don't know. This is the thing you notice about a lot of dudes who grow up in like relatively small towns. I wouldn't necessarily call Lansing a small town because they have more than 100,000 people living in it. Um, but it's one of those situations where you grow up, especially when you go to like community college. Eventually, the thing about the local community college in Lansing is that it's one of those places where you ever just see like you ever like hit a certain point where like you get out of high school and then you see some of the girls that were like the most highly desired girls when you were in high school, and then you see them now and like time has not been
well, sure,
kind to them.
I can observe the same thing with certain guys. There were guys that were, star of the football team, whatever, and then 5 years later they've got a beer gut and they're balding and whatnot. So yeah, it happens.
Yeah, like I see it all the time with women in that group. It's like, my school, it's like, yeah, but going back to the whole thing I was saying about the whole, male feminist thing, it was like the thing that made me fall out with them. It goes and also ties to the whole thing um, about what was this thing about the whole beauty standards thing. I fell out with them because the two main people that I had the biggest problem with was a guy who you can just kind of look at the motherfucker and tell he's a creeper. Um, B, a married couple that the husband, you kind of, I can't figure out if he's gay or bisexual. I don't know what the fuck his deal is, but he's just such a little toady for his wife. And his wife, who, by the way, is an admitted sex worker, not even bullshitting. Um,
And he's okay with this, apparently.
he knew it before they got together.
All right, then.
And then the last one being this one woman who she runs. I don't know if you've ever heard of this thing called safety pin box.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that. That was
Yeah, that woman, I have a problem with her because my initial reason for not having a problem with her is it's like, so let me get this straight. You're going to take highly biased information and you're gonna sell that for like $100 a month to people that clearly are like clearly you're just it's basically an ally tax. That was my problem I had with this. Like, are you fucking kidding me? And what's worse is that a friend of mine, he's trying to rebuild his whole like media stuff after her and the other people I mentioned completely crushed his shit because he had the gall to say, "Hey, maybe the whole thing with Rachel Dolezal." Yes, he said, "Yeah, Rachel Dolezal was wrong for pretending to be black, but can we at least agree that she did some good things for black people?" And they dragged him to hell. And I'm like, "But he's right."
Yeah, I think that's an example of what happens when you make identity the forefront of your ideology.
And
That
that kind of goes to
you
yeah, and it kind of goes to
can't
another.
reconcile that, people that may not be within your group can do good things for that group.
And it kind of goes to the whole thing with and it kind of goes to the whole thing with Gamergate. It was since we're talking about the whole thing with this. I always held the whole opinion with Gamergate that like both sides did a lot of stuff that made me not want to pick a side. Where it was like the pro Gamergate side kind of had a point that it was fucked up what Zoe Quinn was trying to pull.
Well, see,
Although I
that
do,
was also a distraction from the main purpose, which was just solely the fact that there was an issue with the game journalists colluding with each other, having their little secret email groups. Like, okay, we're gonna do this article about this topic, bash this thing on this day. When they came out with those, what was it, the gamers are dead articles or something? There was like 4 or 5 of those. I don't even know the exact number, but they did a few of them, and it all came out at the same time. And then it came out that the reason for that was because they were in the background, talking about this. So there's a level of dishonesty, and there's not trust between the consumer and the journalist. And with the way that you see them frame video games now, they don't talk about, and this is very general, I'm sure you could still find some sites that do, they don't talk about mechanics anymore. They don't talk about things that are actually important to the quality of a game. They talk about narrative and whether that fits into their political ideology or not. And if it doesn't, they're biased against it and give it
oh no, that's
less.
100% true because I get Game Informer.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what happened with Game Informer, but whoa.
Yeah, I don't know how they took part in it, but that that to me, the ones that I know of, it's like Kotaku, Polygon, Rock Paper Shotgun, sites like that. So and then but you had people framing it in the sense of, oh well, they're just attacking this person because she's a woman and they don't want to see women in games or whatever. And that's patently false. You go back.
Hold on, you want to know the worst time anyone took like a hot take on Gamergate was when they did an episode of Gamergate on Law and Order SVU.
Oh yeah, yeah, I saw that.
I watched that and I was like, no, nobody. Okay, first of all, I'm not saying nobody would do some shit like that, but I am saying like
No, look,
Here's the
they take the most extreme thing that they can think of and they apply it to the whole. That's the problem. Look, you're always going to be able to find when you have some kind of group label, you're always going to be able to find somebody that will use that label and identify with it that is not mentally sound and will do some crazy shit. The issue is that they then take that one example and they paint the entirety of the group with it.
oh
And
yeah,
that's a
totally.
big problem with a lot of different things. I mean, we could take that same exact logic and apply it to race, to gender, to so many different things. And that's why I take issue with things like this topic of incels and all that. It's like, yes, there are probably some guys inside of that group that are going to go to an extreme that they should not go to. But the remainder of the people that don't do those things, that happen to, for whatever reason, identify themselves with that label, they still have a chance to come out of that lifestyle and actually get something that they want. The problem is if you start generalizing, start ostracizing, start saying they need to be pushed further and further underground, that's how you get more radicals. And that's
well,
what
that's
nobody wants
true.
to see.
That's
So,
true. That's
so
the thing.
when you said I don't know if you're just being extreme the other last week or whatever. So when you said those things about, kill these guys, blah blah blah, that's where I have a problem. Not because there may not be some people in that group that may deserve a jail sentence, but because it takes the label and it applies it to everybody that can be painted with the brush when it may not necessarily fit the bill.
Yeah, the whole thing is when I did it last week, I was still learning stuff. But I think what happened is when I talked to some of these certain groups of women about the whole incel community, I think the problem I have is I keep trying to explain, like, has anyone ever considered that maybe treating these guys like shit isn't how we, fix the problem? They're like, the problem is entitlement, yada yada. Like, no, some of y'all really just don't do enough to like help these people like fit into society. This goes on an article I wrote like years ago. Like dating nowadays is just what's the word I'm looking for? It's just
Well, there's
it,
another problem too, and it's part of it is ostracization and not treating people that don't have the best social skills as lesser beings, but there's also so many more ways that people with bad social skills are now enabled because we have social media, we have the internet where people can just go and rather than try to work on their flaws, they can find a community of people with the very same flaws and say, well, now we're a minority group. We need protection rather than actually doing anything to get ourselves out of the hole that we're in.
yeah,
And so
like I've
that
seen
becomes a problem. It's good to have people that you can have something to relate to, but I think a lot of the times it goes too far because nobody wants to work on their issues. Everybody wants to find blame to place, and that's not just with this group. That's with the women that are saying every guy is entitled as well. I mean, how entitled is it to think that somebody needs to live up to all your standards, but they have no say in what you do? Like the whole "don't judge me for my appearance, don't judge a woman for her appearance," but yet they're there saying, "Oh, these men, these incels are nothing but a bunch of twos." Like what do you think's going to happen? People aren't going to stand for that kind of double standard. And
the thing.
there are more reasons
Yeah,
people are going to realize that it's just a specific, group of women that are doing that and it doesn't apply to everybody. But the ones that are tired of society and sick of being rejected and don't know how to handle being rejected, they're going to take that brush and they're going to say, "Oh, all women, I'm done."
the thing is, they go to the whole thing with the incels. I say all the time, like if you wonder why so many of these men feel so bad. I think I've tried to. This is. I'm not. I want to make this clear to everyone. I'm not justifying insults, but I'm trying. But I've said this before. This is an article I'm working on. I said if you want to understand why these guys are so inept, you have to realize what society became versus what a lot of men were prepared to exist in when we were kids. Like I'm assuming that the average incel has to be born between like, let's say 89 to about 94. I was born in 1991, so I fall in this group. Um, when we were all growing up, we were all told, have some act right, stay out of trouble, keep a job, keep your own place, do the bare fucking minimum that you're supposed to have as an adult and maybe find something you enjoy
Sure.
and someone will like you. All right. The problem is we didn't expect social media to kick in. This goes to another article I wrote where I talked about about that couple. I don't know if you saw an article about it, but this couple that had been playing Neopets since it came out, and now they're like 20, 26, 27, and they just got married. It's a beautiful story. It's touching. But I wrote an article saying like the fact that they lasted this long through all of the changes social media brought about, and they, despite the fact that like I think one of them I think lived in Arkansas and the other one I think lived in like I think they said Iowa or some shit. Um, Whatever it was, they got together and now they're married and it was so cute, but it made me sad. It kind of goes what I said about the whole thing with George W. Bush, Herbert Walker Bush. I said like you don't see that anymore because we live in a time where like uh, what incentive does anyone have anymore to want to commit anymore?
Yeah. Like I said, there, adding social media into the mix, there's a lot of different options. I see way too many people that seem to think going around and following all these quote unquote e-girls on social media, they somehow think that that's enough. Like I came across this one guy's Twitter profile yesterday and I looked at it and I'm going through his tweets and replies and I just thought that it was
Wait,
kind of sad.
was this name up at 4 a.m.?
It wasn't. I don't think it was anybody connected to your page. I just
No,
happened.
no, 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 no. Was it him? Because I know who that is, and I have a very interesting story to tell about him.
I don't think
The
so.
dude,
I don't remember.
the dude you argued with, who you said you using a Japanese name, but you're black. Isn't that
Oh,
a
I was
false
messing with
revelation?
him because he was calling the girl, that one chick, white when she's actually half Asian. So I was just messing with him.
Or I can tell you a very interesting story about him, and there's proof about this if you ask the right people. That dude is known as Little Marcus. That motherfucker is a whole ass pedophile. I'm not even bullshitting.
Really?
I'm not even bullshitting because there were screenshots going around because he's this big Twitter feminist. There was a fucking screenshot of him, trying to shoot a shot with a girl who at one point clearly tells him she's underage. And then when everyone started coming at him about that, he tried to cover his ass and say, well, she's not 15, she's 16. That's not better, fucker.
Jeez.
And the thing is, we all know it. Every argument he gets in with certain people, somebody whips that out on him. And despite this fact, he still is allowed to rock in all these different circles, despite the fact this is a known fact about this dude.
Well, I mean, has he actually done any? Has he actually done something illegal, or has he just expressed interest in
He's
young?
expressed interest in young girls. Like he even made like offhanded jokes about how he would have to like hook up with a girl while she's drunk or some shit like that. Like, how are y'all letting this dude rock just because he says what y'all like? Like, yo, really?
Yeah, I mean
Really?
that's kind of messed up. The unfortunate thing is that there isn't too much that can be done to him unless he tries to act on something.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah, I said the whole thing about. Now, where did we leave off before I told that story?
Um, geez, I kind of got off track as well.
But oh yeah, the whole incels thing. I said like you can't wonder why these men are so incredibly like are so incredibly inept. But like it kind of ties to what's going on with myself. Like I am so socially inept. This is why I kind of went to those groups and for a while was you can't wonder why men go to these groups and then and you can't wonder why these men go to these groups when it's clear as day. Um, you're not trying to like help them. Like a lot of times, like they go to these groups because at some point they got called creepy for doing something that any other normal person would consider like, oh, that's nice, but you know, you're maybe trying a little too hard. Like for myself, I was on the whole thing of. I remember back in high school, there was a girl I really liked. I all I did for that girl was I carried her books to class, I bought her some candy and stuff like that. I told her how nice she looked. I was
Right.
under the
General
impression she
compliments and help.
yeah, I was under the impression that at the very least she at least liked being friends with me and maybe would change her mind. Keep in mind this was me in high school. I was like 14 at the time. I didn't know better. The thing that made things get out of hand was her sisters who went to middle school, one of my cousins, because they wanted me to leave her alone because her sisters, I don't know what the fuck their deal was, jumped my cousin as like a warning to keep me away. And then when my school got a hold of it, it became this whole fucking thing about, oh, he's stalking this girl. One of the counselors actually said that what I was doing showed signs of me being a potential sex offender. I'm like, all I did was buy a girl candy and carry her books, and now you're calling me a whole ass creeper? Like what the fuck? And
Yeah.
that kind of fucked with me even to adulthood.
Right. So the problem is that people that may not even have done something to necessarily be put into that group end up getting put in that group. And that's my issue with this crime happening, and then everybody all of a sudden is all into this term and this topic, and they're posting about it as though they're suddenly experts on it when, like I said, they didn't hear about it but a week ago. And now, now they want to pretend that this is the problem with society as a whole, but
It's
they're
not
not.
the
They're
problem with
looking they're
society.
looking at they're looking at a symptom, not the root.
Like I think the problem is that when you look at someone like Elliot Rogers, I tell people all the time, I, I always said this for years. I knew something like Elliot Rogers was going to happen eventually. Like if you want to be completely like and this is why I always said the whole red pill movement always makes me uncomfortable because if you listen to a lot of the logic of so much of the red pill movement, it sounds like some shit that Ted Bundy would say during the interview in prison.
Well, the issue is that they focus too much on generalizations. That's my problem. I don't buy into the the group mentality. I think it's important. You can make generalizations. There are obviously certain behaviors that are typical, but you have to be really careful to try to stay level headed and not apply that to everybody else, because then you get into dangerous territory yourself and you start to become the very thing that you initially started speaking out against.
Yeah, I can see that because it's one of those things where I've said this before. People all the time, I say all the time, they always are like, "Well, women do this, this, this." That's why I don't like that group, Hoe Busters,
Yeah.
because the whole thing with Hoe Busters, they're like the black MGTOWs. The problem is that they have this whole thing where it's like, y'all, it just seems like y'all are like mad because the women you're attracted to have decided to what's the word I'm looking for here? It seems like y'all have too high of standards. And this is someone who actually sat down and read Elliot Rogers' manifesto. I think after I read all that, I said, like, this is clearly a guy who had some, like, clear as day entitlement issues, if nothing else.
Sure, and I think some people have those, but I think that the way that it gets framed is it's always a guy that's entitled. It's never the opposite way around. And I think it exists in general. I think I think, yeah, we can point to those people that committed crimes, sure, but those are their acts, and it doesn't necessarily apply to people that you kind of just want to lump in together with them. You're supposed to address the problems before it gets to that point.
Yeah, but the problem is with the whole thing with the incel group, I keep trying to say maybe we should try to like talk to these dudes, and they're like, no, we don't need to talk to these guys. We need to like cast like you. I keep trying to explain these to a lot of them, especially feminists. I keep trying to explain to them like casting these type of men out into society, you don't actually fix the problem. It kind of becomes like a situation with like I don't know if you watch Game of Thrones. You kind of are setting yourself up for a situation like with the White Walkers. Like you're just casting people out into the barren world, and then they come back just more emboldened by their own beliefs and what they think and what they want, and they've
Right.
now joined up, and now they're coming to like wreck your shit.
Well, see, this is a much different take than what I gathered via Twitter. So I'm curious what your actual opinion is. Is your actual opinion ostracize or is it help?
As opposed to what I first posted about it, it's not ostracized. It's more like it's more along the lines of we should try to help because I also between that time watched this documentary called Shy Boys by a woman who spent about a year in the incel community, and she even says, "Yo, a lot of these guys just need some like psychological help. Some of them might be on the spectrum. Like the ones that are like legitimately dangerous are a very small amount of them. Like most of these guys are just
I mean
they just need
that was mainly my point, that I saw people making very broad statements, and the reality is that there's very few that are actually radical. The majority are just kind of, for lack of a better word, in a spot where they're feeling pathetic, maybe not worthy of anybody, but they still have their natural want for some kind of affection. And to call that to just call that natural desire entitlement, I think demonizes something that is just a very normal thing to want. Everybody wants somebody that cares about them, that they can care about too. And to call that entitlement is kind of absurd to me. There's a
yeah, because
level
that's
where it can become entitlement, but generally speaking, it's just a natural thing that we all kind of want on some level.
yeah, and I said this to a woman. I talked to a friend of mine, and I said like it's I don't think that they feel they're entitled to it. I think they're just sad because again, this goes to what I said all the time. This is what it feels like when I'm dating from my perspective. It's constantly going out and being told, don't be creepy, don't be creepy. And then you're like, all right, I won't say anything. I won't start with anything initially sexual. Um, I try to talk nice. I try to talk about stuff that we might have interest in.
Sure.
Um, then they're like, "Yeah, you're really nice, but I'm not interested." All right, cool. Then talk, constantly get told I'm not interested, and they're like, "You need to be a little more forward." And then you're forward, and somebody's uncomfortable. That don't be creepy, and like, well, stop trying to go after women and get your life together. But then when they tell you go get your life together, you realize a lot of the women are going for dudes who are like have worse off than you. Like, I'm not saying I'm entitled to a woman's affections because of what I have or what I do. It's just like you see a lot of these women and they're saying, I want a good guy who's working towards bettering his life and all this shit. But you sit down and you realize these are women who, after telling you, I want a guy who wants these things, you clearly see that same woman with a guy who's like, take me for example. I might not have a car. I admit that 100%. But I have my own place. I have a good job. I stay out of trouble. I have no random kids running around. Every This is a note that every woman, including my own mother, makes note of. However, With a lot of the women I tend to go for, and this might be on me on some level. They say, you need to like. I go for women who like they'll go for dudes who like have no job, are constantly in some their life is constantly in some sort of flux. It's this whole thing where you're just like, yo,
Well,
like,
I think those are people that are, they're looking for the wrong qualities. Whatever the reason for that is, I don't know. Maybe it's their own upbringing. Maybe it's something going on in their life.
oh no, a lot of times it is upbringing because it's one of those things where like people always say like, well, you're not entitled. Like, no, I'm not saying I'm entitled to it. It's like, let's put it like a sports analogy. It's like, it's like if the Golden State Warriors were up a no, let's try a different sport. It's like if it was football, if like the Patriots were playing against the Browns and the Browns just swept the Patriots, not because they played better, but because the fucking ref kept making calls that completely crippled the Patriots.
Right.
Like it's that sort of situation, not because the Patriots deserve to win, not that they are going to win. It's one of those situations where you're just like, you know, one can't help but wonder, like, was there ever a point at which it does seem kind of lopsided. Like you just want, like I asked, was like, why does it seem like they go for dudes who are like, total fucking losers? Like, well, the loser might actually treat me better and actually be a lot of fun.
Uh, I don't know about that. The thing is, I think there's a
Another example, yeah, another example I'm talking about is that I remember back when I wrote that article that got all that controversy. You can still look. There was a comment where I said like, what makes me upset is that I work hard, I stay out of trouble, I do things the right way, but yet I'm losing out to girls. I'm losing out with women to guys who are like fucking SoundCloud rappers. Like,
Yeah,
and
well,
she's
I mean
like, well,
that's a status thing where it's like, oh, this guy's artsy or whatever. So that's apparently
that's what she said. She's like, well, maybe the said girl's into the arts. And I'm like, so she's an art hoe. Got it. Because those are the worst kinds.
yeah. I mean, look, it's one thing to have an appreciation for something, but that can't be the driving quality that you're searching for. There's more to a person than that. And I think a big issue with that we're encountering here is one of people prioritizing what are shallow characteristics over the ones that will lead to something long term and something meaningful. And like I said, it takes time for people to learn that. Unfortunately, some learn it earlier than others. But for the ones that do learn it early, there's an imbalance because they see the bullshit. They see that they're being told one thing and that observable reality is showing them something else. And some people can reconcile that, and others become incels, I guess. That's the problem. But
Oh, yeah.
eventually, if you are really, you know, doing the right thing by yourself for yourself, you're gonna come across the right person if you put yourself out there. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not it's not gonna
Yeah, but
fall.
putting yourself out there doesn't always like nowadays get you the right person.
No, it
Like
doesn't.
I've like a lot of times putting yourself out there. This is the thing I noticed like I know so many men who took time out to get themselves together, and then you look at who they typically were were attracting, and it was like, wow, clearly you've attracted like women who, or what's the word I'm looking for here? Women who know they're approaching the wall.
Oh, I see what you mean. So like they realize their value is going down and they need to get with somebody.
I wouldn't necessarily say use the word value.
Well,
I would
in the sense of the way that they will be. judged and perceived because there, I mean, look, like it or not, it's a sensitive topic for some people, but there is obviously a prime time for, your appearance and all that. And if you waste it, then you end up in a situation where time has passed you by and you're not where you want to be when you get to a certain age.
The problem is that I think as a guy, a lot of guys don't start hitting their like prime physically till like way later, especially if you're a guy like me, where like you don't start looking better until like late 20s, early 30s.
Well, yeah, there's definitely differences.
Like with it, like I noticed this about going living near MSU. There are a lot. I used to hear back when I worked at my old job. I used to hear all the time like, "Why are these kids so fucking stupid?" And I used to say it every time. These are kids with almost no responsibility, away from parental guidance at their physical peak. Like no shit, they're acting stupid all the time around here. Like, come on.
Right.
And the thing is, I say all the time, they, I hear people, women all the time tell me like, maybe you just need to lower your standards. I'm like, maybe you need to just stop telling me to like maybe you just stop telling me to like be like the cleanup dude for you, because you notice. And this is the thing I try to explain to women. When women try to set you up with their like not as pretty friend, I don't know if they realize like how often they set you up with like the worst.
I mean, I don't know if that's intentional or if that is them trying to do something nice for their friend because they're women, they're aware of the difference in appearances between them and their friend.
Yeah, like there's some women I know like they're like, oh, I'm not really interested in you, but you might want to hit up my friend. Like the girl themselves, she might the girl themselves in this situation, she kind of looks like Ashley Graham to give you a comparison. She looks like Ashley Graham, but the girl she'll set you up with looks like. All right, this is something I want to make this very, 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 very clear for everyone listening. You're not ladies, you're not unattractive because of your weight or because of your skin tone or because of like things that can be that are very arbitrary. Unattractive is unattractive. Like you have to understand that. Like there are a lot of heavy set women who are very pretty. Don't believe me? Google BBW porn.
But I think the issue is that that same sort of reasoning doesn't get extended to men as well.
Oh
Only
no, it never does.
only
Like
one
men.
side is being told, like you were saying earlier with the way that you kind of compared it to Tumblr artists, and they draw the women, they'll be fat, but yet they want their superhero men chiseled. So it's sort of the same kind of thing, and it's not right. It creates feelings of worthlessness based on things that some people can't control necessarily.
Yeah, and then they wonder why like men today feel so worthless. But it's like, well, what? And then this kind of goes on in the black community. I was like, you wonder why all these men feel so worthless. But like, this is what they're afraid of. You constantly keep telling them, you're worthless, you're worthless, you're worthless. But it's like, don't you see that's not really like helping them? And they're like, well, what about all the things women have to worry about? We're constantly getting beaten and raped and yada yada yada. I'm like, I understand that, but that doesn't mean you have to like be so shitty to to.
I mean, biologically, ignoring any more uncommon sexualities, men and women were, made for each other. So all this adversarial behavior is kind of crazy to me. But I think we've exhausted I think we've exhausted this topic. So my only thing would be I started up this stream to try to get to the bottom of what the issue was with my particular posts because things had seemed very I don't know, trigger happy lately.
I
So
know. My whole thing is this. My frustration is when it comes to like talking to women about like sex and stuff like that and dating. I think my frustration at its core is that it kind of starts to feel like women, what's the word I'm looking for here? It feels like women today often it feels like women today have this like weird imagination about what dating is like because they again, one of my friends, I talk to her all the time. She's like, "Oh, come on, sex is." I understand why you're talking about sex. Like sex is easy. Sex is not that big of a deal. I'm like, yeah, but for you, you can probably get easier. Like, there's a lot of men in your phone right now that if you called them right now, they'd probably be ready, ripping ready to like, get down. Like as a dude, you have to meet a certain level of attractiveness to be able to pull that kind of shit.
yeah, there's definitely a difference in the ease of which one side can get a partner. I mean, there's men that can pull it off, but if you're somebody that is not necessarily looking for that, it can be a little bit more challenging. Plus, you know, if you have some kind of standard, that also makes it more difficult as well. Um,
Yeah.
but my point was, you know, trying more so to just figure out what your issue was with me personally. If there isn't one, there isn't one. But it
There
had
isn't one.
gotten to the point.
I think I kind of mislabeled what we were talking about online. It's just one of those things where it's just like, Jesus Christ. I think it's one of those things where like I'm in a weird place right now where like I kind of feel like a lot of the stuff going on with the left in America is kind of going into a weird place, which is why um I'm kind of a closeted fan of dudes like Chris Ray
Right.
because everyone said, "Oh, he was the whole Gamergate dude." And I just want to like, leave off with this whole point about Gamergate. While the pro Gamergate side said some wild shit and did some wild shit, I will always look at people like Anita Sarkeesian and Jonathan McIntosh is just like, you fucking idiots. You're not helping things at all.
Well, no, what they're doing is they're pushing a narrative and creating a business model for themselves. That's really what it's about. I mean, they may believe what they're saying, but at the same time, it is about the money for them. It is about the recognition.
Oh, yeah, totally.
All right, so I mean, it's almost 3 a.m. here, so I'm sure it's
Oh,
probably
you're the same time zone as me.
okay. Well, yeah, then. All right, so I guess that's gonna be a stream. It was interesting. But yeah, man, you can,
Um, Everyone follow me on Twitter
yeah,
at no mo white women. That's NOMO white women.
yeah, you
Thank
can
you.
get that out there, no problem. Uh, I don't know how many views this is gonna get, but you never know. All right,
And
so look, I guess this is for the most part settled, but I guess if it goes back to passive aggressive sniping, I'm gonna have to pull you in here again.
all right. Anyway, I gotta go take care of a potential booty call. I'll talk to you later.
All right, later. Well, that was interesting. Yeah, guys, I don't know how many of you are left here. Looks like there's a couple of people watching, but appreciate you hanging out for that stream that got a little bit more interesting than I thought it would be. It started off kind of slow, didn't think anybody was going to show up, but we got something out of it. I just it's not a big deal because it's, it's Twitter based, but it's funny when you actually get somebody to talk to you, and not face to face, but at least voice to voice, and it kind of changes. And I knew that when I approached this conversation, and I kind of pointed out earlier in the stream that, okay, so you're basically taking your personal issues out on things that I've been saying, and that's pretty much exactly what it was. So thanks guys for hanging out, and it's good for the most part. Brought up some good points. Thank you for listening, Nimlord. You have been acknowledged. But yeah, we'll do one of these again sometime soon. I'm hoping I can get more people on to discuss stuff, and we'll go from there. So thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you next time. Take care.